Alrighty, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Combo. Hopefully you're having a wonderful day. Today we're going to be looking at the ultimate gadget tier list here for Season 8 of the Finals. As you can see in front of us here, we have every single gadget, including some that have been taken away here in Season 8 of the Finals. I can't lie to you, this list is actually proving to be relatively difficult as, you know, with gadgets especially, looking at map, destruction, team comp, things like that. Unlike weapons, where it comes down to the individual, a lot of the time, right, you're looking at utility with gadgets, so understand this list is very subjective, but, you know, it can change a lot depending on the map and the playstyle your team chooses to undertake. Additionally, this list will be from a competitive perspective. As I said, with the majors going on as we speak, this tier list is going to be geared towards the more competitive side of the game. As I've said in the past, man, it's pretty apparent that Embark is taking a stance on supporting the competitive scene, at least until the majors have concluded. So with that said, this tier list might be a little cutthroat. We're not going to give much leeway for gadgets that don't provide a ton to the team. So once again, understand that framework as we go into it. I'm going to briefly talk about each tier here. S tier for me means probably nerf it. A tier for me means the gold standard, very viable without necessarily being in need of a nerf. B tier means it can still be just as good as something in A tier, maybe even S tier, but it has that situational kind of application and sometimes needs a little bit of help. C tier, you're looking at more niche, kinda. With gadgets, I don't really say niche because none of the gadgets really carry your playstyle, but once again, can be very good or really useless, depending on the situation. And then D tier means, alright, this thing just, it needs a buff. There's very niche use cases where it can work, but it definitely needs a buff. As you can see, we have no F tier because in my humble opinion, there are no F tier gadgets in this game. And with that said too, understand this is my opinion, right? It's going to change a lot based on who you ask. This is just my experience playing the game. So with that said, thank you all for coming and watching, and let's get right into the tier list. Okay, so starting it out, we have a very interesting pick. We have the anti-gravity cube. Now, I'm tempted to put this in A tier. The only thing stopping me is I feel like Heavy especially has a few sets of gadgets that are just so dominant to the point where if you don't use them, there are going to be a lot of issues that come with team comp. Now, I will say, there's one thing people don't talk about with the anti-gravity cube is actually there's two things. Firstly, it got a buff not too long ago to where once you throw one down, the cooldown on this thing is super short. So while this thing is on the ground, you can basically get a second one like 5 seconds after your cube is run out, which is very powerful. Additionally, this is very good at distorting sightlines. So if you're aiming at somebody and they're on the other side of a cube, it's very difficult to hit them. Finally, I guess there's three things. This can actually be used offensively, so if you throw this at a target and lift them off the ground, their accuracy goes to shit. You know what? No, I'm going to put this in A tier. This is probably a super hot take, but I really think this thing is being slept on. Like anti-gravity cube, and of course we're not even mentioning the fact this gives Heavy upwards mobility, which they just don't have, right? So that's a big upside. You can move cash outs. This is also good at launching cash outs, stopping steals, initiating steals. Anti-gravity cube is very overpowered in the right scenarios, but generally speaking, it doesn't need a nerf because there's a lot, there's a lot that goes into it. So I take back the overpowered part, but overall, man, super powerful. Hopefully I didn't rant too long on that one, but I really think you're sleeping on the cube, so definitely go out and give it a try. Okay, next up we have the APS turret. I'm going to stick this in B tier just because at the end of the day, right, with the so it's weird, the meta right now in the pro scene, right, you're seeing a lot of long-range engagements with weapons like the sniper, the LH1, the repeater, the BFR especially. And although you are still seeing those close-range kind of burst damage fights as we are still in that healing meta, APS turret isn't seeing as much value because your typical items that would be thrown, that would be destroyed by the APS, aren't quite as good as they were in previous seasons. Now, of course, right, if this was power shift, oh yeah, S tier 100%. But generally, weapons that use projectiles just aren't really in the meta right now. So APS isn't getting a ton of value. Now, understand, right, there are some very good techs that you can use with this thing. A really good tech that I don't see talked about too much, I believe it was Altough who created this. If you put the APS turret on a barrel and throw it at mines, it will actually get rid of them. So you can actually have a mobile APS turret, which is very powerful, and I don't see that talked about a lot, so I want to bring that to the forefront. Of course, I'm going to credit Altough for that discovery. But once again, very powerful in the right scenarios. However, kind of like I said, this can either be S tier or D tier, just depending kind of on the match itself. So for me, APS turret is going to go in B tier. Next up, we have the Barricade. And, okay, so this thing kind of got stealth nerfed. Like, Embark didn't really mention it in the patch notes, but they're not really letting you put this in doorways anymore, which I think is really weird. Unless I missed it in the patch notes, unless they mentioned it, but I don't believe they did. So in my eyes, I'm going to view that as a bug, and I'm going to stick this in A tier for a few reasons. Once again, barricades, if you don't have the right ways to destroy them, you just can't. Like, these things have a ton of health, so you need something that has, you know, destruction capabilities to really counter them. Very good for head glitching. We'll talk about something with the healing emitter in the future where you can actually use the barricade and the emitter to get a very powerful head glitch. And in a meta where we're looking at those long-range burst engagements, it's very powerful. Another one, of course, just if you're getting shot at in a environment like out in the open, you can always drop one of these down. It's a nice way to get cover, and you can get very creative overall. I think there's a lot of skill expression that comes with the barricade. If you're the chonk, what you can do is put these in a doorway if Embark decides to let you do that in the future and like bait people into mines. So once again, a lot of applications for the barricade. I'm assuming the whole doorway thing is going to get changed. I don't know, man, I could be wrong in that, but overall I would say barricades going in A tier. Next up, we have Breach Charge, and these things I think kind of get a bad rap. I don't think they're like C or D tier. I'm going to stick them in B tier, B for Breach Charge. In my eyes, they are just kind of a worse C4. The biggest issue I have is the cooldown, the uptime, and the actual impact they have on the map. I think the individual Breach Charge just needs to do more, because as we're going to talk about, in my eyes, the Breach Charge just has an alternative that's just mostly better in every way. The only upside to the Breach Charge that I see, if you do it correctly, which is putting your Breach Charges down and then throwing the cash box on top of it, or the cash out rather, and hiding them, they can actually do some pretty substantial damage if you're able to land all three. But once again, man, it's just, once you use all three of them, it takes quite a while to get all of them back. Of course, Embark did buff recently, well, not super recently, the amount of time it takes from throwing to detonating them, which was a nice kind of quality of life change. But I don't think that did anything to really raise them higher. As we said, there is an option that is just better. But that's all to say that these things are not useful. There are times when they can help you. You can still stick them on barrels and try to nuke people. Once again, the rearming time did kind of help with that. Obviously, at high levels of play, that's not something you're going to do. But overall, man, Breach Charge, not in a great place, not in the worst place. So for me, similar to the APS, we're going to stick it in B tier. Alrighty, next up we have the Breach Drill. No, this is not the better version of the Breach Charge. I'm going to stick this in D tier. I'm going to be honest, guys, I think this is probably the worst gadget in the game. Just because I think it's fundamentally flawed. Of course, like, DMAT did get nerfed, and I was maybe thinking in my head, okay, maybe we'll see some reason to use the Breach Drill after the nerf. I'm going to be honest, not really seeing that. I think what this thing needs is, it either needs a faster deploy time, maybe 2 charges, maybe it needs to do damage. I don't really know, man. It's just, I don't know what the mindset behind this thing really is. Like, the other 2 classes just have such better options for like breaching walls and whatnot. And this thing just doesn't do enough. The flashbang would be useful if this thing wasn't like the loudest thing in the game. Like, as soon as you slap this thing down, it's like everybody in the map can hear it. And it's like, okay, I know not to look that direction. And I know exactly what direction the enemy team is going to come from. So there's no element of surprise with this thing. I don't know how they could buff it. My thought is because it's so long and risky, make the detonation on this thing like 2 C4s. And I know that's probably way too much, but if you want people to use this, and as we talked about, this is kind of outside of the frame of this gadget, people are using Heal Beam now after the nerf to the DMAT. So maybe we're going to see this thing, although, man, I don't see the pros using it. I don't really see anybody using it, and overall, man, I hate to say it, but I think this thing is definitely D tier right now. Next up, we have the C4. I'm going to stick this thing right in S tier. C4 is just fantastic. I mean, this literally does everything. It's great at baiting into cash outs. It's great at terraforming. If you didn't know this, right, you can only keep 1 charge up at a time, but you can actually have 2 C4s on the ground, which is absolutely busted, because if anybody like runs into these and they don't know they're there, and this happens at every level of play, you detonate these, bro, that's going to kill a medium and a light guaranteed, and it's going to leave a heavy very hurt. You can also use these things aggressively. Like, you can definitely, if you can learn the arc on them, you can chuck this like a grenade and do a ton of damage. It also has some synergy with other builds. For instance, if you have a medium with gas mines, you can stick a C4 on top of it and detonate that gas to block off choke points if you need to. It's also good at destroying other teams' mines and whatnot. Chuck this down, it'll detonate everything. Once again, C4, I think I don't have to go too much into it. Truthfully, the jack of all trades, does everything well. Good damage, good destruction, and can also stall cash outs. For all those reasons, man, that's exactly what you would want at high tier levels of play. I'm going to stick the C4 in S tier. Okay, next up we have the data reshaper, and Embar, can I just say this right now? Give this thing back the charge you took from it. Like, what are we doing? Like, just give it back. I'm gonna stick this thing in C tier because it is kind of niche. I will say a very meaningful interaction that this does have that a lot of people don't know, which kind of surprises me. You can actually data reshape barricades, which in a way, right, that makes this a direct counter to the barricade. However, medium's another build where arguably you only really have one extra slot for gadgets, and you know, you don't really want to take a sort of defensive offensive. This thing's super weird. Once again, I wish it just had more charges. I don't know why Embark took one away from it. I still think that's one of the weirdest nerfs in the history of this game. But overall, once again, data reshaper can be good for breaking into areas, maybe getting rid of turrets. I know turret did get buffed, but once again in the pro scene, nobody's using turret, man, so you're not going to see that. You can get rid of mines without having to detonate them, which is actually kind of powerful, especially if people are putting mines on reses. However, once again, looking at the highest levels of play, you know, most of the time the fights happen so fast and they're over so fast that that doesn't really become an issue. But overall, I would love to see this thing get a buff, at least a chargeback at a minimum, but I can't justify anything higher than C tier, hence why it ends where it is. Okay, next up we have defibs. Do I have to talk about this one, man? This is still the best gadget in the game. It will continue to be the best gadget in the game until it gets something. I don't know what it is, man. I've made an entire video about defibs, if you want to hear that. Like, this thing, you can talk a ton about these gadgets and, like, about this gadget. I know there's two of them, so I made it plural. You can talk a ton about defib and how you think either it's healthy for the game, it's unhealthy for the game. At a minimum, though, if you're at the highest level of play and you're not using defibs, unfortunately, and I sound like a piece of shit saying this, you're throwing. You are. Like, these are just so important that entire team comps and gadgets that are being picked are designed to counter defibs. And we'll talk about more of that in the future. But overall, man, right, having the ability to cancel the revive time, get your teammate up in a fight, even using people rematerializing with the defib to bait engagements is another thing I've seen. That's more like high-level pro theory. Yeah, defib is just absolutely bonkers, man, and it's got to be S tier. Next up, we have explosive mines. These things are so simple, man. They do good damage. They're pretty easy to see. They don't one-shot lights anymore. If they still one-shotted lights and they had 2 charges, I would stick them in S tier, but they don't do a ton of damage. You get them back pretty quick. You can still have 2 on the ground. These aren't game-breaking. They're just very okay. You're not going to hurt yourself by using them. You're also not going to hurt yourself by not using them, so very average overall. I don't have a ton to say here. You can combo them with the whatchamacallit, pyro mines on the heavy and the gas mines on the medium, but we'll talk about those mines and how I think they're just better in every way, because explosive mine, yeah, that's all there is. There's just an explosion. So for those reasons, explosive mine is going to go in B tier. Okay, next up we have the flashbang. I'm going to stick this one in C tier only because the nerf to flashbangs. So if people don't know about this, flashbangs used to have a weird radius where, like, if you weren't looking at them, there was still a chance that it would kind of blind you, and you get these back really fast. Like, if you're chucking flashbangs a ton, yeah, it's it's actually pretty annoying, especially if you have 2 people running these. However, what's always going to hold back flashbangs is the fact that you can flash your own teammates. I mean, I'm going to be honest, guys. If these didn't flash your teammates, I could see an argument for maybe even A tier on these, but even at the highest levels of play, man, you don't want to risk flashing your teammates, especially because you see a lot of players on mouse and keyboard who are playing in the pro scene. It's very easy for them to hear this thing and just flick in the opposite direction and just not get flashbang. So once again, there is a lot of counterplay. Individual skill plays a big factor. The pros are going to see these things coming and just immediately react to them. So with that said, I would love to see flashbangs maybe be better, but at the same time, that's really annoying, so maybe I don't want to. Hard to say, man, but overall, flashbangs going in C tier. Next up, we have the Dome Shield. This is kind of your number 2 pick on the heavy. I'm going to stick this one in S tier as well. Dome Shield, for as long as this game has been out, man, you throw it down, you shoot them, they don't shoot you. There's also a lot of tech when it comes to like close range engagements with Dome Shields, where you can actually kind of jiggle peek in and out, bait people into them so they can't hit you. You can also just kind of throw this on top of people and they just can't fight anymore. Of course, glitch grenades are going to counter these, which we'll talk about glitch grenades when we get there as well. But even then, man, Dome Shield is still just one of the most powerful gadgets in the game. You're gonna be pretty hard pressed not to find a heavy running them for good reason, because they really they provide everything. They can be used offensively, defensively, they can be used to draw fights, stop fights. They really do everything. So for that reason, man, I'm gonna stick the Dome Shield in S tier. Okay, next up we have the frag grenade, and this one really pains me. I'm gonna be real with you guys. Why did they nerf these? I understand it was a little frustrating to get hit by a frag and be like, I don't really know where it was. I feel like that nerf was more for the lower skill player base, because now, especially at the higher levels, man, you can see these from like a mile away. So getting hit by a frag now is just so uncommon. And these things already, before the nerf, like, frags have fallen from like all the way to top of S tier to now I'm gonna stick it in B tier, man. Because they're easy to see, you only get one of them, they can't even one-shot a light, and it's just so easy to see them. It's so easy to see them, and in this meta, where people are like doing all the burst damage and this, that, and the other, you don't even really have time to throw these and take full advantage of them. I probably have more time on frags than I would say the majority of this player base, so this hurts me to put the frag here, man, but I feel like it's on the same level as the explosive mine, where like, before, what made the frag viable was the surprise factor and the burst damage, but they've taken away the surprise factor. So what do you do? I mean, it can still do a lot of damage, but it doesn't have a high enough uptime. It doesn't do enough damage. At this point, man, the only way to make this thing viable is to give you 2 frags again. That's just my opinion, but overall, man, sucks to see the frag get another nerf. Not sure why they did that, but yeah, I'm gonna have to stick the frag in B tier. Next up, we have the gas grenade, and gas grenade I'm going to stick in C tier because, one, you only get 1 charge, right? This is the only reason the frag is better than something like the gas grenade. Frag does burst damage, you know, that's a big thing. Gas you can use to kind of block off areas, but as we'll talk about, there's a gadget that literally does exactly what the gas grenade does, but you get 2 charges of them, and the only difference is you can't throw them as far. Gas just also doesn't deal enough damage. The radius on the gas is just not very good. It doesn't activate immediately like a pyro mine. Yeah, actually, for that reason, I'm going to put this in D tier. This might be crazy, man. If you love gas grenades, I'm sorry, but they just don't do enough, man. Gas is also super easy to get rid of because a lot of people have means of fire. I know the Cerberus isn't super popular, but that gets rid of it. Incendiary barrels is very easy. You see a ton of fire. You have pyro mines. I mean, once again, the list goes on. Gas is just very easy to counter. And once again, man, it just doesn't do enough damage. And it doesn't linger. There's no case scenario, right, where I'm thinking to myself, man, I wish I had a gas grenade. So for that reason, man, this thing needs some help. I think if they're gonna make this viable, straight up, it just needs 2 charges. Like this needs 2 charges. As we'll talk about in the future, if Goo Grenade gets 2 charges, so does Gas Grenade. That's just my take, but as it stands now, probably the worst grenade in the game. Would love to see some love come to this gadget. Okay, well, here we are. We have the better version. We have the gas mine. I'm going to stick this in A tier, and you're probably saying, wow, that's quite the disparity combo. But for a couple reasons, right? You have the surprise factor, as you do with any kind of mine. It's good at blocking off doorways. You can put down 2 of them. You can throw them down and shoot them to block off areas. Stick them on a cash out if people want to run by and they don't have a means of getting rid of them. They're going to have to detonate them. Additionally, here's the big one, right? You can technically have 2 down, right? But once you throw down those 2 mines, you can also recharge 2 of them. And I think you can get where I'm going with this. You can technically have 4. And that is so overlooked sometimes. Like, if you're good at managing your cooldowns, you can have 4 of these at one time. And that is just, like, the amount of map control you get with 4 gas mines is insane, right? That's the difference, right? With the gas grenade, yeah, you can throw it, but you're only getting the effect of 1 at a time. With the gas mine, dude, you're getting 4. And that is just so huge not to talk about. Super powerful. It also combos with the frag grenade, but since the nerf to the frag now, the frag mine combo that I used to use all the time is just nowhere near as good as it used to be. Very unfortunate there, but overall, gas mine's still powerful, and I would definitely say A tier pick. Okay, next up we have the gateway, and I'm going to stick the gateway in S tier. Once again, 2 words here. Team mobility. Okay, this thing is the ultimate movement gadget. There's not really anything else in the game other than like maybe a few healing gadgets that we'll talk about that benefits the team quite as much as the, whatchamacallit, the gateway. I forgot the name of it. That was embarrassing. It does everything. It moves cash boxes. I've been called a million slurs in ranked for not using this thing. It's also why I don't play ranked too often. Gateway, once again, it also is just really beneficial for weapons that struggle at closing the gap. Maybe you want to run something like double barrel, run the gateway. Maybe you want to run something at long range, and maybe you poke the opponents, throw in a gateway, and finish them off. It really does everything, right? So gateway, one of the best gadgets in the game. I'd probably say this is the second best overall right now. And you're not going to see a single light in the finals or in the majors that is not going to be running the gateway. So for those reasons, man, gateway's going in S tier. Next up, we have the glitch grenade. I'm also going to stick this in S tier. I think glitch grenades have been S for a very long time. You have counters to specializations. The aim on these is super easy. You have to try to miss with a glitch grenade. You get 2 of them. A direct counter to a lot of the S tier gadgets in the game, that being the gateway, the defib, as well as the dome shield. We'll talk about more that it counters as well. Also gets rid of mines. I'll be honest, man, glitch grenade literally does everything. I don't really see how they nerf it. Maybe just take away 1. I mean, that's maybe my thought. But the utility that comes with glitch grenades is just so unprecedented. You're going to continue to see these, once again, in just about every single loadout. You're gonna start to see the most optimal light loadout, especially when we get to that final gadget that kind of makes the trifecta for light. But for those reasons, man, don't think I'd have to say too much. That's going to be going in S tier. Next up, we have the glitch trap, and I'm going to stick this one. So this is a tough one, actually. So these things, in my eyes, this is the ultimate no-skill gadget, but the reward payoff for these is actually quite potent. I'm actually going to stick this one in A tier for a couple of reasons, right? So you get 2 of them, which is already a pretty big upside. So if 2 get destroyed, chuck 2 more down. This is the ultimate counter to light and defibs. If you don't like defibs, use these. Throw these down. It's going to, at minimum, force the opponent to shoot them, or they can't defib. Also, if a light is trying to push your team, this is the ultimate counter to evasive dash, which is the most used specialization on light. I want to say it has like a 95 to 100% pick rate off the top of my head, right? This is an ultimate counter to that. And just being able to just chuck one of these down, and unlike the glitch grenade, right? Of course, the glitch, you can throw it and it has more range and more like immediate applicability. These just sit there and you just continually profit. Like as soon as you throw one of these down, you immediately profit. So for those reasons, man, no skill. Potential value of these is insane in countering some of our top gadgets. So for those reasons, man, I'm going to stick this one in A tier. Next up, we have the goo grenade. And in my last tier list, right, I stuck this in the A tier. I'm going to stick this in S tier now. This is maybe debatable, but even after the nerf to the goo grenade, I think that kind of says too how strong this was. You still get 2 charges. It's still good at holding areas and defending. It's still good at engaging targets and blocking them off. It's still good at, you know, disengaging fights and throwing them behind you. And really at the end of the day, right, there's also some really cool tech with goo grenades. If you throw them, I think Akazo showed this off. You can do the goo explosion. I'm not sure if that's patched yet, but that's another option you have. On the medium especially, this is usually what you'll see. You'll see DMAT or not DMAT. You'll see the defib, the jump pad or zip line, and then usually the goo, because you can actually throw down a goo wall, put down a jump pad, and give yourself a huge boost. So once again, there's a ton of synergy. Like goo, I think, has the highest skill expression of any gadget in this game, because there's really just so much you can do with it. So when we're looking at the best players in the game using this gadget and we talk about skill expression, I don't think it's any shocker that after some much more critical thought on my end, this is an S tier gadget for sure. Next up, we have the Gravity Vortex. I'm going to stick this in B tier, although I will say, I can start to see the value of this thing more. There is a way to kind of stack 2 of them. I talked about this in my Gravity Vortex video. Go check that out if you haven't already. This kind of goes back to the frag grenade problem, where if these were more difficult to see, because when you chuck these down, like, it's just like, hey, shoot me. There's just like a big blue thing above it. These are very good at stalling cash outs. I think they're fantastic at that. However, the other gadgets on light, that's what's suffocating these. Like, Vortexes could be good if there was a faster activation time, and also if most builds couldn't just get out of them, right? Of course, heavies are going to have the biggest time, or biggest problem getting out of the Vortex, but light and medium have some easy ways. You have evasive dash, you have zipline, you have jump pad, right? There's a lot of easy ways to get out of it. At the end of the day, these could have a lot of value if you can get 2 people in them, but overall, man, not the strongest right now. Maybe could use some love. Not sure how they do it. I think maybe just reduce the cooldown even more. Honestly, that would be my thought, but I'm not a game dev. Overall, you're not going to see pros using these. If you do, it's going to be a very niche swap 2 option, but even then, man, you're going to be pretty hard pressed to find them. So for that reason, I'm going to stick this in B tier. Next up, we have the healing emitter. I'm going to stick this one in S tier just because this is kind of similar to the glitch trap in that you pop it down and you just immediately profit. You know what I mean? Like, you stick this thing down, you start getting healed. It's another gadget that it's kind of rare not to see a heavy using it, especially because, and the difference here is the team utility, right? This thing allows you, especially in a meta where everybody's kind of peeking each other at long range, this keeps you sustained so much longer. And here's the kicker, right? Where this has an advantage over every other healing gadget in the game. You pop it down, and you can keep fighting while you're getting healed. And one of the biggest downsides on heavy that I don't hear talked about a lot, it takes quite a while to regen your health. And the emitter is a direct solution to that. So for that reason, man, the emitter is very powerful. Of course, we may have to go through, I'm looking at some of these, we might have to change things as we go on. But anything healing right now, it's just bound to be super popular. So for those reasons, right, and also the head glitch I talked about with the barricade, very powerful pick, and you're going to see it basically every game, if I had to guess. Next up, we have the H+ Infuser. I'm going to stick this in A tier as well. I would argue this is still probably the 3rd best gadget in the game, but you're probably saying, Combo, it got nerfed. Yeah, I got nerfed by 1 point of healing per shot, but the burst healing on this is still just insane, man, especially on heavy targets where you have to try to miss them. Like, the value from this and the uptime you get, the fact that there's no range on it, you just shoot and start healing. I mean, there's a reason that every single light is using these. I think you can probably see the trifecta now of Gateway, Infuser, and Glitch Grenade. It's probably the most popular light loadout right now, of course, with Evasive Dash. Very powerful, man, and I don't know why. You know, it's still a healing meta. You're still going to see this every single game, and as of now, healing doesn't really have any direct counters other than burst damage, right? And gadgets as a whole, other than maybe RPG and mines, there's not really any burst damage gadgets per se, and maybe frag grenade, but we talked about frag isn't as good as it used to be. So for those reasons, man, H+ Infuser, still super powerful. If you want to win the game, you better have this thing equipped. Next up, we have the jump pad. I'm going to stick this one in S tier as well. Jump pad is the ultimate movement gadget in the game, other than, of course, the gateway. However, what the jump pad can do that the gateway cannot do is move the cash out. And I think this one especially, what you'll see a lot is people will angle jump pads and they'll drop cash outs and they'll just fucking launch them out in the open, making it just so much easier for the team defending to do their defending duties, you know what I'm saying? Also, once again, you're getting a lot more team movement, and these are permanent, right? Another advantage it has over the gateway is you stick one of these down and they stay there, right? They persist. The cooldown is pretty short on them, and they're also good at engaging fights, similar to the gateway. I do think the gateway is better overall, but as it goes for movement on medium, this is probably your best option. Of course, there is another movement option that we're going to talk about, but overall, man, you know, this is by far, I would say, one of the best gadgets in the game, hence why it lands in S tier. Next up, we have the lock bolt, and this is a really tough one. I actually don't quite know where to rank this. You can argue a lot of different things. I'm going to stick this thing in A tier only because the synergy it has with like the BFR. And you're probably saying, wow, Combo, that's kind of niche. Well, yes and no. Once again, the BFR is becoming more and more popular, and the winch allows you to one-tap targets to the head with the BFR. Now, because we have gadgets that you know, heal opponents at super fast rates. It may not be the most consistent thing in the world. The lock bolt's also very good because once again, you have quite considerable ease of use. This is good at locking down areas, locking down opponents, hence the name, right? And, you know, at the end of the day, it's just a really good stall gadget. And also, if you get hit by this thing, and the enemy team pushes you, there isn't a ton of counterplay. Like at high levels of play, if a light gets lock bolted, that team's probably going to collapse on them, and there's not a ton they can do. Especially because, man, lock bolts have a shit ton of health. And if you've ever tried shooting one, you know what I'm talking about. Just to put it in perspective, it takes 2 sniper shots to break a lock bolt. So, very powerful gadget. I wouldn't say OP, but definitely a good alternative pick if you're trying to counter certain playstyles. Next up, we have the proximity sensor, and I will say, man, I don't think this thing is super powerful. They actually got nerfed not too long ago, so they're much easier to shoot. You can have 2 down, and that's definitely a pretty good upside. However, if you're looking for more recon, there is a gadget that just does what this does much better that we'll talk about. Of course, that being the sonar grenade. These are nice, similar to the glitch trap, where you just throw them down and immediately profit. But most of the time, right, as soon as you get detected, it's very easy just to pop them. Pros aren't going to miss their shot, so they're not going to be sitting there trying to break these with like half of their FCAR mag, so there's also that. And at the end of the day, right, game sense can make up for the utility these provide, in my opinion. Of course, having vision on your opponents is very powerful, but this is only going to be useful on defense, usually. And that's the other thing too. So you're not getting full usefulness all the time. If you own the cash out, these are nice to have, but they're not going to make or break your game. So for that reason, man, we're going to stick this in B tier. Next up, we have the Nullifier, and I do think this thing is super underrated. But I will admit, right, in a meta where things are getting to be a little bit more long range, and, you know, this thing is good at certain things like stopping cash outs, and, you know, it's a really good get out of jail free card if you're getting attacked. One big change that Embark made was the fact that now if you nullify an opponent, they can no longer block bullets. So in essence, you can turn every single fight in the game, assuming you're with your team, from a 3v3 to a 2v3 for a short period of time. And in a game, once again, where burst damage is super high, having the ability to knock an opponent out of the fight and not let them do that burst damage, super, super powerful, especially against heavies who usually have the most, we'll say, environmental impact, for lack of a better term. So nullifying heavies is still very powerful. However, it's a skill shot. The uptime isn't very hard, or isn't very long. It also, for some reason, needs reloaded, and I don't care how good you are at the game. There are times where you're going to forget to reload this thing, and it's going to bite you in the ass. So, once again, for those reasons, I would love to see Nullifier go higher, but, you know, it's kind of like the APS. It's either really good or not very useful at all, so for that reason, I'm going to stick it in B tier. Next up, we have the Pyro Grenade, and I will say, right, Pyro Grenades do have some pretty good easy use. They can counter goo. That's pretty cool. But as a grenade, right, this is trying to be offensive. They just don't do shit for damage. Even if you like direct impact somebody, unless they stand in it, you're doing like 40 damage max, man. And that's just not good, especially as a skill shot. Pyro grenades just need to have 2 charges. Straight up, like no stop. These things need to have 2 charges. And even then, I don't know if I would even put them in B tier after that. They are better than gas grenades. One, because they directly counter them. They also counter gas mines. But sometimes putting that fire down can actually be kind of bad for your team. And in the cases where you would have, you know, this is kind of a similar situation to the gas grenade and the gas mine. In the situations where you need fire and you like need it right now, there is just a better alternative. So for those reasons, man, I would love to see this thing get buffed. But as it stands now, I can't see anything higher than C tier. Okay, next up we have the Pyro Mine. It's kind of funny how the gas and the Pyro were right after each other. Kind of like I intended that. So yeah. Pyro Mine's going up in A tier. This is the highest damaging mine in the game. This is kind of like a pre-nerf explosive mine. As I said, comboing explosive mine with Pyro Mine is going to give you a one-shot. But when we talk about utility, man, you're not using Pyro Mines with explosive mines. That's just taking up way too much of your loadout, especially at a competitive level. As we talked about, the heavies gadgets are kind of set in place for the most part. And, you know, these are a good off-meta pick if you need to counter opponents. A really good counter that I think we're going to start seeing is lights running the cloaking device as a result of thermal vision not being in the game anymore. And Pyro Mines, man, if that light's not paying attention and they're trying to be spooky and you're really good at like blocking off doorways and putting these on chokes, that's a nice counter to Cloaking Device, so definitely keep that in mind. But overall, once again, you get 2 of them, you can shoot them if you need to get rid of gas. The burst damage is just absolutely insane. So for those reasons, man, Pyros have always been very powerful. Don't think they're OP, but overall, I think definitely a solid off-meta A-tier pick. Okay, next up we have the RPG, and this is a very difficult pick, right? I could see the argument for this thing going in S tier. However, when we look at the other gadgets you have on heavy, that being the emitter, the dome shield, and the C4, which is, I would say, one of the more popular loadouts, you can in fact sub the RPG for the C4 if you're looking for a more aggressive playstyle. Also, the RPG is very good at finishing targets off, especially if you hate lights, man. RPG is very good against lights. You also have the ability to break down buildings. However, what kills the RPG is the fact that the uptime's kind of low compared to the C4. Once again, when it comes to finishing off targets, at the highest levels of play, I feel like that value starts to kind of diminish. Being able to drop a cash out is good. Once again, C4 does that better. C4 also does more damage, and you can have 2 C4. In my eyes, man, I think the C4 kind of steps on the RPG's toes a little bit. Once again, I can see the argument for this going in S tier, but man, it just doesn't really feel like it has much of a place in the meta. You know what actually I'm going to do? This is maybe a crazy take, man. I think I'm going to move down the heal emitter into A tier, because I feel like this is usually what you see, right? Like as far as gadgets that can be subbed out, I feel like heal emitter and the RPG aren't necessarily must picks. I think C4 and dome shield are arguably must picks. This is really tough, man. Heavy's gadgets are very tough to rank. I could definitely see both of these going into S tier. You see them commonly. I don't know the pick rates on them. I wish I did off the top of my head. But overall, man, I could see both of these going into S, but I don't know if either of them are so broken that they have to be in one tier or the other. I don't know, guys. You know, this is where we talk about this. Let me know what you think in the comments, because this is a very tough pick. But overall, man, I think RPG is going to be A tier. Okay, next up we have Smoke. I'm going to stick this one in C tier. Smoke used to be pretty damn good when Thermal Vision was in the game. But I'm going to be honest, guys, you do get 3 charges. That's super cool. You can see targets through smoke with sonar on occasion. It's kind of funky sometimes. It doesn't always work, but that is an option. I feel like smoke isn't really beneficial to either team. You kind of just throw smoke down and it kind of just stops the fight altogether, which can be good. Smoke is good for steals. It's good for steals and it's good for reviving, but not as good as you'd think, because when you see that smoke go down, unless you are playing like 3D chess and you're like, I'm gonna throw a smoke over there and make them think that I'm there, but I'm gonna put a smoke over here too, but I'm actually over, you know what I mean? Things like that. Throwing down a smoke most of the time is just telling the enemy, hey, look, I'm in this smoke cloud, don't shoot me. You get what I'm saying, right? When you're rezzing and going for cash outs, usually when I see smoke, I know they're just gonna be crouched in the middle, and I just kind of wait for the smoke to go away and just light them up. So for those reasons, man, smoke is not the greatest right now. Although as a bonus, if you hate controller players, smoke does make aim assist go away. So if you think controller has too much aim assist and you think they're the bane on this earth, run run the smoke grenade and ruin their day. So for those reasons, man, smoke grenade's gonna be going in C tier. Next up, we have sonar nades. I'm gonna stick this in A tier. I think sonar nades are the ultimate like off pick for the light. If you want that ability to kind of have, you know, if you're trying to fill the more scouting kind of role, it feels like Embark wants to make light kind of a scout build. However, you know, with the gadgets that we have, like between the infuser, the glitch grenade, and the gateway just being so damn powerful, you know, you really, I don't know, man. Sonar is very good because it's so brain dead. You just toss it and the information you get is insane. And the fact that you get 2 of them is just insane to me, man. But once again, it's easy to use. It provides a ton of value. I don't think it's S tier. It's not a must pick, but it's still very good, similar to all the gadgets in A tier. So for that reason, man, Sonar Nade, powerful, but definitely not a must pick, hence why it ends in A tier. Next up, we have the Thermal Bore, and this is another very good, oh shit, this is another very good off-meta pick if you're looking to fill that role of destruction on light. The big difference is there's not like a single thing the thermal bore can't counter. So let's see, goo, this thing gets rid of it. Walls, this thing gets rid of it. Gas, this thing gets rid of it. Even if there's smoke, which should counter fire, this thing can still kind of set stuff on fire sometimes if you stick directly, which is super weird. And to mention, you get 2 charges and you can shoot them from anywhere on the map. This is also the best gadget in the game for destroying suspended structures, which, if you were paying attention, we did get more of in some of the map reworks. So we're gonna see even more value with the thermal bore. If it weren't for the fact that the C4 is just fucking busted, I would argue that this thing and the C4 kind of go hand in hand in terms of being able to terraform the map. Big difference though, you're not one-shotting people with the thermal bore. So for that reason, thermal bore, very good. I think probably the most slept on gadget in the entire game, hence why it's going in A tier. Next up, we have the tracking dart, and yeah, man, I'm gonna stick this in D tier. The big advantage to the tracking dart before was that it stopped health regen. But we're in a healing meta, so, I mean, that 5 damage doesn't really matter when, you know, you can just you can just stop people from not regenerating health by healing them, so there's that factor. I do think this is slept on for sure. I actually use it on stream quite a bit, just because in lower elo lobbies, where people get hit by a tracking dart and they just don't know what the fuck to do, it's actually really funny. Especially with burst damage weapons, being able to essentially have wall hacks when you hit somebody with this can be very good, but at the highest levels, man, people know how to play against this thing. They're not typically going to give you angles to peek people, and, you know, it's just, there's no situation most of the time where the sonar grenade's not going to do the same thing better. So for those reasons, man, tracking dart is going to be going in D tier. Next up, we have the Vanish Bomb, and I'm going to stick this one in... I'm just kidding, no. We're going to stick this one in A tier, mostly because, man, you know, thermal vision, not a thing anymore. So we have a gadget that doesn't necessarily have a direct counter, other than sonar, of course. Also, this is just a really good kind of get out of jail free card. I think it kind of does what the Nullifier does a little better. However, the big difference, man, is team utility. Once again, popping this on your teammates, like, I don't care what level of play, even at the pro level, I don't usually expect to see an invis heavy, but it does happen. Also, this gives Light some really needed, like, repositioning if you're using evasive dash. So what I'll do a lot is I'll pop this thing in the open, and then I can just run through an open field, and I don't get shot. So kind of a big deal overall. Very powerful. I think you're going to continue to see this kind of like these 3 gadgets right here on Light, your sonar, thermal, and Vanish Bomb. These are usually your 3 most off-meta picks if they're not using the big 3. So for that reason, man, Vanish Bomb is going to be going in A tier. Finally, we have the Zipline, which this is a crazy take. I'm going to move this one in S tier with the jump pad. A lot of the time, because one of the most common loadouts that I'm seeing on medium, because at the end of the day, medium is the team utility playstyle. This loadout right here, defib, the jump pad, and the zipline. A lot of the time, if they're not using goo, they're going to be using zipline. I would argue that both of them can kind of be must picks depending on the map and the enemy team that you're fighting. Also, when it comes to movement, zipline plus jump pad is still one of the best movement options just in the entire game, period. Also, the big advantage of the zipline over the jump pad is you can just place it anywhere, and you can get in some pretty funky spots using the zipline. You can also use this to stall cash outs. Like, I see people do this on occasion, and you might even see it in the pro leagues. People will stick a zipline on a cash out, and unless it gets destroyed, obviously, you can't actually take a cash out when there is a zipline there because you keep attaching to it. I'm sure if you've ever seen a revive statue next to a zipline, you know what I'm talking about. So that's kind of what I'm talking about there. Overall, man, you know, just looking at, you know, I don't use a ton of zipline myself, but I will say if you look at the pro scene and you look at what's being picked, the zipline is usually always there, right? If they're not using, of course, the gas mine or the goo grenade, you're going to see zipline. So for those reasons, man, zipline's going to be going in S tier. Anyways, everyone, I do hope you enjoyed the video. Looking at the list here and just kind of analyzing to see if there's any changes that need to be made, I honestly think this reflects the competitive scene pretty damn well overall. That could be a really stupid take, but overall, man, I do think this is pretty on point. At the end of the day, and I want to make this so clear, there's 2 things, right? It's my opinion, and this is subject to change so much depending on team comp, what you're comfortable with, the map you're playing on. That's the big thing, man. So what we love about the finals is anything can work because anything can happen, right? Put that in a quote book. That is the finals in a nutshell, right? Anything can work because anything can happen. But anyways, people, I'm done ranting. I'm sorry this video went on for so long. Although if you're me, man, I like putting these on in the background and just hearing people yap and sitting there like, damn, this motherfucker don't know shit what he's talking about. But either way, man, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please be civil in the comments. I can't help if you're not, because that's just how fucking the internet is. But who cares, man? Hopefully y'all enjoyed it. Let me know what you think in the comments. As I've said in the past, I want this to be a place of discussion, right? Don't put people down because they're like, I've only been playing the game for 100 hours and this guy's playing for 1,000. He says this and he's stupid. Don't do that, man. But anyways, I'm done yapping. Thank you all for coming and watching. I apologize if my voice doesn't sound good. I am super fucking sick right now. I don't know what happened, man. And after the knee surgery, I'm getting kicked in the fucking nuts by life right now. But anyways, people, I hope you enjoyed. This has been Combo. Stay home, stay safe, and I hope you have a wonderful day. I'll talk to you next time. Later.